Finally, I sat down in 77 or 78, and I worked for about 18 months straight. The pages piled up about this high.
From the written word to movie theater mania. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 books that should be movies. For this list, we're looking at the most fascinating stories that have not yet been adapted on the screen. We're focusing solely on novels and are not including short stories or comic books of any kind. Number 10, The Secret History, Donna Tartt.
The writing is spectacularly superb. I have been enjoying every single sentence of this book.
This 1992 page-turner inspired scholars to stroke their beards with delight. The Secret History chronicles the psychological turmoil of 6 elite college students after a murderous deed, and contains all the elements of a classic Greek tragedy.
It's hard to say who was the most influential, but honestly, it was probably my early reading of Homer and the Greek tragedians.
With a confession opening the novel, an unreliable narrator reflects back and allows the reader to ride shotgun as the violent actions are explained. It's a classic whodunit, ripe with suspense and begging to be adapted on the screen.
Go to hell.
Number 9, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Judy Blume.
Meet Pete Hatcher. He's got one little problem, and his name is Fudge. He's a human tornado.
I don't believe it.
Remember those days when your worst problem was your bratty little brother? If so, then you and Peter have something in common.
Fudge was actually based on my son Larry when he was a toddler. He wasn't as outrageous as Fudge. I mean, it's fiction, you know.
The first in Blume's series of Fudge novels about Peter Hatcher and his brother Farley Drexel, also known as Fudge, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing jumps off the page with vivid characters, good-natured humor, and relatable stories about sibling rivalry.
Get up off the floor and sit in your seat. This is not a kennel, and you are not a doggy.
Again!
Appropriate for kids and adults alike, the story remains relevant even over 4 decades after it was first published. And, like all of the author's books, this novel covers themes central to growing up. And that's something we'll never get too old to watch on the big screen.
Fudge, you will eat your cereal, or you will wear it.
This was turning out to be fun after all.
Number 8, The Corrections, Jonathan Franzen. An adaptation has been in the works for years, but Hollywood cannot seem to connect the dots for this memorial of American life in the 20th century. The Corrections explores the moral decline of 3 Midwestern siblings and the mental health of an old-fashioned patriarch, unwilling to embrace a brave new world.
It sure looked like family life. Was there really anything amiss here but the clinical depression of the man peering in?
Franzen's National Book Award-winning novel caught the anxious mood of post-9/11 American culture, even though it was released less than 2 weeks before the attack, and could translate to movie magic under the right direction. Please correct this problem, Hollywood, and identify the solution.
I'm not writing for people in 200 years. I'm trying to create books that the people can connect with based on the experiences they're having right now.
Number 7, Hyperion, Dan Simmons. Sci-fi readers have been trembling with anticipation for decades and drooling at the idea of this Hugo Award-winning story finally hitting the big screen. The first book of Simmons' Hyperion Cantos, Hyperion is set in a parallel world with both time travel and an exponentially advanced internet network. Not to mention oddities such as a creature that impales surprised pilgrims on metal trees. Now that's something that was made for 3D. It's only a matter of time until Hyperion merchandise hits the streets and your local movie theater. Prepare yourself.
Why haven't they made this into a movie? And then did research, found out that Graham King had the rights and that James Cameron toyed with it with Leo for a while, and then he decided to make Avatar.
Number 6, Rendezvous with Rama, Arthur C. Clarke. The author of this 1973 sci-fi classic co-wrote Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. But an adaptation of this mesmerizing work remains out of reach. With a futuristic setting aboard a space vessel 12 miles in diameter and 34 miles long, Rendezvous with Rama mixes human explorers with alien robot hybrids, massive skyscrapers, an interior sea, and a mysterious island. If that's not enough material for a Hollywood screenplay, then we are living in dark times. let us rendezvous with Rama in glorious 3D.
Rendezvous with Rama was one of the best science fiction books ever. And it's been picked at over the years. People have borrowed a lot of stuff from it, but the essence of Rendezvous with Rama is still there.
Number 5, the Dark Tower series, Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Anyone who's read this vast legend by one of our generation's most popular and prolific authors knows those as its opening words. With elements of fantasy, horror, and the Old West, this 8-volume series would crush at the box office. As the protagonist and last member of the Gunslingers, Roland Deschain would be a career-making role for any actor. The magical setting guarantees visual splendor, and the fictional language known as high speech would create a special audio tapestry on screen. HBO and Warner Brothers have both been attached to a cinematic reconstruction. However, we may first see an adaptation of King's novel The Long Walk, directed by frequent collaborator Frank Darabont.
When you sit down to write a book, do you know how vast its universe is going to be when you settle into it?
I knew this was going to be a big one.
Number 4, Blood Meridian, Cormac McCarthy. This 1985 story of Old West violence remains one of the author's best works, but may be too dark for modern cinema. Although the adolescent antihero discovers how difficult life can be, the mythical Judge Holden takes nihilism to another level. With no body hair and an appetite for destruction, he could easily become one of the most terrifying characters ever seen on screen.
Brando in Apocalypse Now is the perfect person, but, of course, like, if you could get Daniel Day-Lewis, he'd probably nail it, is my guess.
Just as Blood Meridian challenges the reader's threshold for brutality, the novel seemingly challenges the film industry to step up to the plate and make the film. Hopefully, Cormac McCarthy's work will find the right man or woman for the job. Number 3, A Confederacy of Dunces, John Kennedy Toole. Maybe it's a curse, or maybe it's bad timing, but this 1980 classic has long caused trouble for curious filmmakers. John Belushi, Chris Farley, and John Candy were all tapped to play the eccentric Ignatius J. Reilly at one time, but passed away suddenly before production could move forward. With a multitude of vibrant characters and a stunning portrayal of 1960s New Orleans, A Confederacy of Dunces contains plenty of drama and comedy for a wonderful screen version. However, perhaps the title and main character's disdain for pop culture will forever block an adaptation.
Ignatius J. Reilly is a flatulent man-child with an outdated worldview and an unpopular notion for what he considers taste and decency.
Number 2, 100 Years of Solitude, Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
It sold more than 30 million copies throughout the world during the writer's lifetime. It put a spotlight on the Latin American genre known as magical realism.
While the rights to produce a film may never be granted, admirers of this 1967 Latin American novel often dream of filtering its magical realism through a cinematic lens. 100 Years of Solitude covers 7 generations of colorful characters, making it perfect for a film treatment.
What I know today is that I did not stop writing for a single day, for 18 straight months until I finished the book.
But its esteemed reputation may daunt some filmmakers, while others may be intimidated by the need to precisely capture its specific Colombian flavor. With a utopian setting and remarkable representations of time and fate, one can only imagine how a lavish but thoughtful production would introduce Gabriel Garcia Marquez to a new generation of moviegoers and readers.
It happened that with film, I realized that making a movie was infinitely more difficult than I thought.
Before we crack the spine on our top pick, here are some honorable mentions. Number 1, The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger.
When you're a kid and you read Catcher in the Rye, you're just like, oh my God, somebody gets it.
One of the most important and widely heralded works of 20th century American literature, this 1951 novel found its way into the back pocket of teenagers worldwide.
More than 60 million copies of his 1951 novel, Catcher in the Rye, have been sold, read, worshipped, and studied. And it made the central character, Holden Caulfield, better known than Salinger himself.
Whether it's the rebellious nature of Holden Caulfield or the idea of his physical being. The larger-than-life persona may be too powerful for any well-known actor to take on.
Young Hinckley, the whiz kid who shot Reagan and his press secretary, said, "If you want my defense, all you have to do is read Catcher in the Rye."
If and when an adaptation ever does take place, a relatively unknown artist may spring upon the world just like Salinger's protagonist did so many years ago. We'd all get a bang out of that.
It is this kind of combination of a deep sincerity, a spirituality, this state-of-the-art vernacular. This guy was talking the way we were talking at that very period.
Do you agree with our list? What book do you think should be made into a movie? For more mind-blowing top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
It's really nice. We were pampered. It's almost sybaritic.